Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus CSS DFS, the podcast. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico and see all the ways that you could save.
There it is.
My name is Daniel, joined by Mike Clay and our friend Al Zeidenfeld, who joins us all the way from Los Angeles. Let's start with Al. Al, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's a perfect day here in Los Angeles. Week 1 went well. All my priors were confirmed from the offseason, so I'm feeling really good going into week 2.
Oh, yeah. I'm feeling less good going into week 2.
Which means it's going to be a dumpster fire more than likely.
Yes, that's exactly what it's going to be.
We're going to overreact to everything in week 1, and then week 2 is just going to go back the opposite way, and then we're going to be settled in for week 3. And we'll be good to go.
I'm so ready for it. Week 1 is so tough to be able to figure out, right? Because you've got all this new information. You're figuring out where everything's at. Now, week 2, you finally are able to have a little bit more info. A small sample size, but still a sample size. So really excited to jump in here. Let's do a quick week 1 recap, if we have to. I got buried.
We do.
I had a couple of tough running backs. I had Christian McCaffrey, underperformed. I had Elijah Mitchell.
Too. Oh, I didn't have Mitchell.
Underperformed. Right. I also had T. Higgins. T. Higgins also underperformed. I also had Najee Harris in my lineup. Najee Harris also hurt me. So I came down with 129.3 points. Mike, you had 143.9. Our winner was CJ Grease with 223.1.
Pretty good.
I hope you put that lineup in the Millie Maker, CJ, from that standpoint. Make sure that you join us again this week and every week. Mike Clay, DraftKings is doing a tournament with us. We have a DFS league. You can play against Mike and I. We set our lineups in there. There are cash prizes. You know how much the prizes are?
It is $1,000.
$1,000.
Yes, free to enter. $1,000 in prizes again this week. So join up. And again, we're going to put the link out there on social media later at Mike Clay NFL on Twitter, at Daniel Dopp on Twitter. We're not going to announce that it's $1,000 in prizes on social. That's just for you.
Just for you
only
guys.
tell the listeners that. So join up. Again, $0 to enter. So all you do is set a lineup. If you win, if you win, it's like what, top 50 or so. You get a prize, but I'm not sure what the payout structure is, but it's free money. So
I'll look it up while you're talking because I don't really need to hear the things that you're saying anyway.
Okay, I'm done talking. Let's talk about quarterbacks.
Let's talk about quarterbacks here in week 2. Mike, you're taking a quarterback that in week 1 scored less than 10 fantasy points, but you are not deterred. You are ready for whatever is about to come for Trey Lance. $5,700 taken on the Seattle Seahawks. Why do you like Trey in this matchup?
Well, first of all, I talked about this on the first show. I watched the tape on this one, right? We don't have time to watch every single player in every game throughout the season, but I had to see Lance, right? I was battling between he and Carson Wentz for this spot as the top value play in DFS this week. And I wanted to see what everyone was talking about because there's a lot of negativity out there surrounding Trey Lance, and it was not as bad as advertised. First of all, especially when they were trying to come back in that game, full-on monsoon downpour. I mean, by the end of the game, there were puddles all over the field. Like, how do you expect guys to run routes and get open and Lance to be able to navigate the pocket? It was tough. He made some really good throws in that game. Didn't have a lot of opportunities to throw from a clean pocket, but he did make some good plays. I think better days are ahead. In better conditions. It might rain a little bit this weekend. We'll keep an eye on that, but it won't be as bad as Chicago. They're at home. They're against Seattle, a team that just got crushed by Denver. I mean, Denver should have won that game by probably 3 touchdowns.
Oh my gosh.
Just so many blown opportunities. It's a much better matchup. But again, Lance is priced as QB9 this week, and it's a really light slate, right? So there's an extra Monday Night Football game.
Yes, there is.
And some of the quarterbacks not in this Sunday slate. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's like a good chunk of the QB1s,
that's
right?
Like
and he's still ninth.
4 of the top 4 quarterbacks, basically, right?
Right. And he's still ninth in pricing with all those guys out of there. That's too low for Trey Lance. And he's going to run, right? Even in a bad game, he had 13 carries for 54 yards, averaging 12.3 carries and 58 rushing yards in his first 3 NFL starts. I just talked about Seattle's struggles last week. A lot of reasons to expect Lance to bounce back. And again, he's not going to cost you a lot, right? So you can do a lot with him at quarterback and then build around him.
I am totally with you. I laid out why I love Trey Lance this week. I have him as QB8 just in season long alone, but here in DFS, unbelievably great value, $5,700 against the Seahawks team that gave up 443 total yards. That was 4th most in the NFL in week 1. All right, Al, you like Derek Carr this week. And I think that has something to do with his new pass catcher, Devontae Adams, because he looks pretty good with Devontae catching balls from him.
Yeah, he's a good football player, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have the full-on college shower narrative working. Like, these guys have showered together before, so clearly they have some chemistry on the field, and we saw that in week 1 with Adams had a ridiculous, what was it, Mike? Like 44% of the target market share in week one.
What else
Something ridiculous like that.
Well, yeah, what else is new? Just like in Green Bay, right? 97th percentile in targets. This will be if he holds up 5 years in a row.
Yeah, so 17 targets, 190 air yards, led the league. Second in air yards in the league was like Jarvis Landry with 127. So it was just a massive gap from one to the next. So easy stackability here. That might be what we call in the industry a tease for later when we get to the lineups. And Derek Carr scored 0.9 fantasy points per completion in week one against a really tough Chargers defense. Much softer landing spot here in week two against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I like Derek Carr here. And to your point, Devontae Adams' target share is 48.6% in week one. That's what those 17
that will
targets
come down,
were.
Totally sustainable.
Yeah, mid-30s still. Mid-30s definitely.
Mid-30s is still a superstar. Like mid-30s, like sustained is.
I think the highest I can remember since I've been in this industry a little over a decade is 39% was Brandon Marshall one year, and that's like off the charts. I mean, you're probably looking at 35 is probably your max for a receiver, especially in that offense with Waller and Renfro. But still, if he's even hangs around 30, he's going to be in great shape.
He's going to be fantastic. Yep, love that. All right, a couple of the quarterbacks that we really like here this week. Carson Wentz, $5,800, taking on my Detroit Lions. Unfortunately, Carson Wentz threw for more than 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions last week. There's a good shot that he could smash here. Daniel Jones, $5,100, taking on the Carolina Panthers. And Tua Tagovailoa, obviously with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. We're going to see how that guy, how that offense continues to play out, but only $5,600. Some cheaper quarterbacks just across the board here, Mike. It looks like most of the guys that we are looking at are not that top tier when it comes to cash games. There's a lot of value in the middle tiers here.
Well, these are some of the top guys because there's no one on the slate, right?
There's no one else.
So wiped out. You almost have to look for a value play this week. I like Wentz a lot. Again, I battled between kind of featuring him in this piece. One of the reasons I didn't is, as we'll get to throughout this thing, I like a lot of Commanders this week. So, especially if you're going to start Antonio Gibson or Curtis Samuel, or maybe you want to go Logan Thomas, like you can only have so many, and especially in a cash lineup, so many players from the same team, but definitely some, as Al put it, stackability in this Commanders offense.
Heck yeah. All right, let's talk about some running backs here. And I think one of the guys that is the biggest value right now currently on the board at the running back position appears to be Darrell Henderson with everything that happened in week one. Obviously no Kyron Williams. Cam Akers looked really tough, and Darrell Henderson only $5,700, got a ton of volume, and it looks like he's going to have that same kind of run here in week two, Mike Clay.
Yeah, I don't see why not. 54 of 66 snaps he played at 82% rate was third highest among running backs.
That's
right?
really good.
That's a big number. If he gets it again, if he's at 65% plus, he's going to have a pretty nice fantasy day in this Rams offense. 13 carries, 5 targets at 73 yards. He was 15th in touches at the position. Just a lot of reason for optimism with his usage in a tough matchup, right? They played Buffalo. They struggled. You expect that against the Bills defense. I think better days ahead here against the Falcons. By the way, the Falcons only faced, like you just look at the raw numbers, they didn't allow fantasy points really on the ground last week. They only faced 13 running back carries. They did allow 61 yards, almost 5 yards per carry. So not really a matchup that you need to be worried about. And again, we have seen this from Henderson before. Last year, weeks 1 through 10, he played 3/4 of the snaps for this Rams offense. It was the number 14 scoring running back on a points per game basis. We've seen it. He's done it when he's healthy. He's been an effective back when he's had the bulk of the snaps, which he did in week one. And again, we expect that again this week. So 19th price running back at $5,700. He'll be locked into my cash lineups.
I like him a lot. Tell me again what you said about the Falcons rushing defense, because I was looking some stuff up specifically about last week when you said that.
I think they allowed the second fewest fantasy points, right? But they only faced 13 running back carries and they allowed 61 yards. The success rate for the Saints was really high, but the Falcons surprisingly led throughout, so the Saints were throwing the ball a lot.
Sure. All right. Al, let's talk about another running back and someone that is near and dear to my heart here in week two. Saquon Barkley absolutely crushed it. A total smash play where you're looking for smash plays when you get to running back. Obviously, here in week two, you want to be able to continue that as Saquon Barkley in spot for another smash play here.
I know that you're doing like Hulk smash when you do that, but it looks like you're milking a cow. So like I always giggle whenever I see you do it.
I need to have my hair down with a hat on, and then it would really look like I was milking a cow.
We need like a farmer's hat, like a straw hat.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley is 7,300, right? I thought that last week was going to be the cheapest we saw him all season long at 6,100. I think this may be the cheapest we see him for the rest of the season at 7,300. This is a $7,500, $8,500 running back based on the 25 opportunities that he got. And when you factor in that Jonathan Taylor is 9,900, and not unreachable. You can get to him. And Christian McCaffrey is at 8,900 coming off of a low volume week. This next tier is massive in savings, but not low on volume. Barkley has a really good matchup this week against Carolina. Last season, Carolina allowed the 4th most yards per carry before contact on red zone runs, on runs originating in the red zone. So like, if you're going to let Saquon Barkley get ahead of steam when they get inside the 20, he's probably going to have an increased probability of scoring. So I really love this spot for Saquon. The price is still not out of reach for us, and he's a place that I want to attack. I think that he's going to be one of the most popular or highest played running backs on the slate.
Hey, which Giants player had the most targets in week 1, Al? Do you know?
Was it Richie James? Like who?
It was, in fact, it was your guy, Saquon Barkley. 7 targets in week 1, led all pass catchers. Richie James had 6. Sterling Shepard had 4. Kenny Golladay had 2. Saquon Barkley is the best pass catcher right now in this offense. I'm excited to be able, we want to see Kadarius Toney be able to get out there. We want to be able to see Wan'Dale Robinson be healthy. But to your point, Al, Saquon is going to get a ton of work, I think, not just in the ground game, but in the passing game too, which is a part of the 5-box running back thing that you're always talking about.
There's nobody else for them to utilize. I thought you were talking about like on the outside. That's why I was like, Richie James is like, how are they playing Richie James over Kadarius? How deep in the doghouse is Kadarius Toney? Or was it just an injury thing? He came out yesterday, said it was an injury thing. He's just here to play, not to coach. I'm not here to judge. That's not what I'm doing out here, but I want to get as much Saquon Barkley as I can because we knew that there was going to be no challenge for him in terms of snaps and touches on this Giants team. At running back, and indeed he led the league in terms of running back snaps at the position with like 83% of the playing time. Over 75 is elite nowadays with all the running backs by committee.
Yep. Heck yeah. I love Saquon Barkley this week, even at his price point of $7,300. And I think he is the cheapest that you're probably going to see him for the rest of this season. A few more running backs that we like here. Antonio Gibson, $6,200, taking on the Detroit Lions.
Another Commander. Yep.
Najee Harris, $6,200, taking on the Patriots. Najee has said that he is going to be good to go and will play in this game. Obviously, love that Najee feels that way. I'm going to wait until Sunday and hear from Stefania doing Fantasy Football Now during the 11:30 hour.
Yeah, keep that in mind when you're probably like him more as a contrarian tournament play. If people are afraid of him, a little nervous in cash, right? You don't want to take a 0 if he has an early setback. Yep.
Christian McCaffrey, as Al already mentioned, $8,900 taking on the Giants. Leonard Fournette, sub 7K, $6,700 taking on the New Orleans Saints. He had 100 yards rushing last week. Could be in another good spot here this week.
Fournette would have led all running backs in snap share if that game was close. He was dominating. He was in like the 90s, and then he just rested at the end of the game, and the number fell. But he's still the guy he was last year when he got hurt late in the year, he was RB3 in fantasy points. Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, only 2 guys that were ahead of him.
Michael Carter, $5,200 taking on Cleveland. He got a ton of usage over Breece Hall last week. Interested to see how that's going to work out here in week 2. And James Conner, $6,900 taking on the Raiders in a game that we expect to be very high scoring. I really like James Conner here this week. And sub 7K, another guy that could really pay out here this week. All right, Mike. We're going to come back and talk about some wide receivers, some tight ends. I'm actually going to have Al go first on wide receivers and tight ends.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just going to switch things up a little bit.
Hey,
But why don't you
just do whatever you want, man?
Why
You're
don't
the
you
boss.
pay our bills?
All right, let's do that. Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save money on insurance?
Would love it.
Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app. Available 24-hour roadside assistance. And more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Fantasy football season is underway, and that means more of what you love. The teams, the rivalries, the stats, trash-talking friends. I mean, this season, you know that your favorite players are hydrating with Body Armor Sports Drink, both on and off the field. Your favorite fantasy stars like Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, they all rely on Body Armor to get them to the next level and perform at their best and to give you the trash-talking points that you need. Whatever your workout routine, you're going to need to stay hydrated, and Body Armor has got you covered because it's made with potassium-packed electrolytes, antioxidants, no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or dyes, and coconut water. I mean, it's a great time to grab some Body Armor Sports Drink for yourself. Everyone is focused on staying active and healthy, and hydration is an important part of that. Body Armor Sports Drink, more than a sports drink. Now, through November 1st, you can buy any one Body Armor product at your local convenience store. Scan the QR code in-store to enter to be one of hundreds of winners to receive a $100 in DraftKings prizes. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Open to residents of the U.S. 21 and older. All right, going to come out and talk about some wide receivers here. And Al, I watched Jerry Jeudy and the Denver Broncos somehow lose to the Seattle Seahawks in spite of the fact that I don't get that. Don't understand it. But Jerry Jeudy looked fantastic in week 1. He looked explosive. You saw the quickness that he has, 4 catches. He had a touchdown. What is it that you like here about Jerry Jeudy in week 2? And do you think he's going to continue to smash here?
So I swear to God, I'm not playing whack-a-mole here, because I think that we're going to play whack-a-mole with the Broncos wide receivers all season long, a lot like we did in previous years. This might be lazy analysis, but like in previous years with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, that's exactly what we did. Oh, Lockett had the big game last week. I'm going to ping Lockett, and then DK Metcalf had a big week. And then you ping DK Metcalf, and then Lockett has a big week. But I'm going to take the cheaper option more often than not. I like that Jerry Jeudy looked extremely spry. I'm giving the Broncos a pass on week 1. That was the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl. They had pinned that game to the board all off season long, and now they get to go home to the friendly confines of Mile High Stadium in Denver and get to square off against Houston's defense, which is a much softer landing spot. Now, his ADOT's going to be low, so high conversion rate expected on targets to catches, and he also has that big splash ability like we saw on the 67-yard touchdown that he had last year. I think that Denver's offense comes out. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board and really put together a really solid game plan here after the debacle in week 1. They should have won that game, as Mike said, by like 2 touchdowns. They didn't. They're going to work to get the ball to the players that make plays, Cortland Sutton, specifically Jerry Jeudy, and stop throwing it to 5th-string tight ends.
I am with you on the 5th-string tight end conversation, Al. Jerry Jeudy, $6,100. Jerry Jeudy is $5,600. Cortland Sutton, his teammate, $6,100. So that $500 in savings you could potentially put somewhere else in your lineup if you like that standpoint. All right, Mike, let's talk from a cash option. Curtis Samuel. I feel like you're just picking on me and the Detroit Lions here. Is that what's going on?
We did that last week and it worked pretty well, right?
We mentioned
with
Carson
Jalen
Wentz
Hurts and A.J. Brown and Miles Sanders. Let's do it again. Let's run it right back with Washington here. Again, talked about it in the earlier podcast today. Underrated offense, right? Yeah. The skill players are there. We were just worried about injuries. O-line's good. Carson Wentz is an upgrade on what they did last year. Samuel, Dotson, McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Gibson, and McKissick in the backfield. It's a good group. It's a really good group with a lot of potential. And of course, they play your Lions this week. Curtis Samuel, can he sustain what he did last week? Absolutely. It's all volume, right? He had a ton of volume in that game, kind of Deebo Samuel-like. 4 carries, 11 targets. He played 69% of the snaps, ran all but 9 of their 45 pass routes in that game. So played a big role, was used in multiple ways. They got the ball in his hands. Took 8 snaps at running back too, right? He was busy in that backfield. The Lions last week allowed 162 yards and 17 targets to Eagles wide receivers and 5.7 yards per carry to the running back. So whether it was receivers where Samuel will line up or running backs where Samuel will line up, they struggled, and he should be in for a big game here. He's the 39th price wide receiver at just $4,600. So put him in your lineup. You can do a lot of damage elsewhere, and potentially in a stack setting, maybe you go with a Wentz and Samuel stack, and you have other options too with McLaurin or Dotson or Logan Thomas, or maybe you get cute in the Millie Maker and go McKissick, right? It could be, there's a lot of ways you could go with it.
I like Logan Thomas, but I hear you. It's very inexpensive if you want to go that route. Couple other wide receivers. We like Rondale Moore, $4,100 taking on the Raiders. If Rondale Moore is not available for this game, Mike, are you pivoting to Greg Dortch?
Yeah, he would be the value for sure after he's just stepped right into that slot role. So it is a tougher matchup against Nate Hobbs, but the Raiders, again, They were good against the perimeter, bad against the slot in week 1, which is rare. Nate Hobbs is their best corner.
$3,500 for Greg Dortch. DJ Moore, $5,700 taking on the Giants. Tyreek Hill, $7,100 against Baltimore. Tyreek saw 4 deep targets in that game in his Miami debut. I think there's at least a shot. There is a chance that Tyreek Hill is able to get something going here this week against Baltimore. Chase Claypool, $4,700 against the Patriots. Jacoby Myers, $4,400 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Deontay Johnson, still sub 6K, $5,800 against New England. Van Jefferson, $3,500 if you want to have someone a little bit cheaper
he's
there.
Not going to play. Is he still on there? Yeah, he's a doubtful, so cross that one off.
All right, sorry about that.
Cross it off, right?
This guy's dead.
Cross it off. And 2 more. George Pickens, $3,600. And T. Higgins.
Yeah, if he goes, dealing with a concussion, name to keep an eye on. Chase Claypool, he got some carries too, playing in the The big slot for Pittsburgh, very interesting. That's gone well so far. DJ Moore, he's going to get shadowed by Dory Jackson, so I don't really want to start him in a cash setting because that's a tough matchup. He held Robert Woods to 1 catch last week, but he's only 5,700, so he's so cheap to get a player that good. So it's a tough. Sometimes you got to walk that line, and he's cheap enough you could still consider it.
All right, let's talk tight ends and wrap this thing up. Mike, Albert Okwuegbunam, $3,700, taking on the Houston Texans this week after week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. Why do you like Albert Okwuegbunam here?
Yeah, what's our favorite thing early in the season on this show for a few weeks? The little Monday Night Football discount. We get, right? We get a little one here, right? We're going to take advantage of a little one here on Okwuegbunam. The 15th price tight end, $3,700. He's behind guys like Noah Fant, Cameron Brate, David Njoku, Mike Gesicki, Taysom Hill, right? Doesn't make sense. You should be above probably all of those guys. Only at 33 yards in the opener. Doesn't seem like much, but he had 7 targets, which is tied for 6th most at the tight end position in week 1. And more importantly, there were 45 pass plays. He ran 33 routes, which is a big number. That was more than KJ Hamler. It was more than Javonte Williams, who led all running backs in targets last week. He was busy in the pass game. And Al mentioned earlier, Houston, not very good defensively. They allowed 352 yards to the Colts in week 1. The Colts tight ends were targeted 9 times in that game. So Alberto, as we like to call him affectionately, is in position to be a nice value here at 3,700 here in week 2.
Heck yeah. All right, Al, let's talk about Hayden Hurst, a guy that I know that you liked. Mike, you liked him a lot in week 1.
That's my guy last week.
He had a couple of nice catches. From that standpoint, though, what do you like about him here in week 2, Al?
So this is another player that we liked all us. Now, if we're game log watching, we have to be a little bit careful with Hayden Hurst because like Cincinnati ran like 100 plays in week 1, and that's just not going to happen on an every week basis. So he got 8 targets, but they're just not going to have that many offensive plays. However, he did run a route on 70% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks last week and saw a couple of red zone targets. And of the 4 guys at tight end who got multiple red zone targets last week in week 1, Hayden Hurst ran a route on the highest percentage of dropbacks. So he is out there, and sometimes your best ability is availability. And if you have Joe Burrow as a quarterback and you're out running routes, you have a much higher percentage of scoring fantasy points than if you're pass blocking. So I like that they're utilizing him in a fantasy-friendly way.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Mike Gesicki right now is what's going on
trade
from
him.
that standpoint.
Come on,
you know
man.
what I mean? So
I don't even want Gesicki. So, can we just send him to like
Atlanta?
Like if they needed a receiver,
no, they've already got a tight end.
If they needed a receiver, I'd be like Gesicki for Kadarius Toney or something. Because the Giants need a tight end like in the worst way. But I don't know.
We got to do something there.
Got to get him out of there.
A couple other tight ends we like. And these tight ends are cheap this week, Mike. Logan Thomas, $3,400 taking on the Detroit Lions. Again, we found a commander at every single position that you like to play against the Detroit Lions this week.
Exactly. They're going to be probably very chalky this week, but in cash, you probably want 2 guys in your lineup from this group.
Kylan Granson is $2,600. Juwan Johnson, $2,500 taking on Tampa Bay. I mean, it is a little bit low when you're looking at cash plays. We have a lot of values, guys, that we're targeting from that standpoint.
Their punts here. Thomas probably is the most upside or the highest floor, I should say, in terms of volume. But Granson split with Mo Alley Cox in week 1. They're going to split that tight end role, and he's only $2,600. That's a punt. And Juwan Johnson, he played a ton. He ran a ton of routes. He's the number 1 tight end for the Saints as of now, at least when they're trailing. And they're playing Tampa. It's going to be a lot of throwing opportunities for Winston. So definitely some punt options at tight end this week.
Game preview. All right, Mike. It is time for our head-to-head game preview. You and I going up against each other like we said to start the show. I do not have... no, that's a negative. I do not have your week 1 lineup in front of me to be able to see what it is specifically that you did. Do you have any overlap from last week into this week?
Any of the same players? Christian McCaffrey I had last week when I defeated you convincingly. And that might be it. I think that might be it. Did I have Tyreek last week? I don't remember.
Give me your week 2 lineup then.
All right, so week 2 lineup, Trey Lance is the quarterback. Talked about him earlier. We're home with CMC again at 8,900, still just too low. Antonio Gibson, I talked about the Washington Commanders. He is going to be in my lineup as well as Curtis Samuel at receiver. So 2 Commanders. Deontay Johnson at wide receiver. He's healthy. He's good to go. 5,800. Tyreek Hill was terrific in week 1. Alberto, just talked about him at tight end, and Darrell Henderson, right? The value player running back. He was like the first lock in the lineup for sure. And then the chalkiest of chalk defensive special teams this week, and maybe one of the biggest ones for the season will be Cincinnati here at 2,200. Why are they attractive? Well, they're playing Dallas and Cooper Rush. So they're going to be in a lot of lineups this week.
They're going to be in a lot of lineups. I like that lineup. When you were putting that together, was there anything that you struggled with? Where did you tweak the most when you're trying to find that value?
Oh, I was like, this is perfect.
Oh, yeah. You just put it in and you were I'm good to go.
My biggest struggle, honestly, was, all right, well, Mike, you can't have 5 commanders. Okay. Yeah. So you gotta get some of these guys out of here. Because I wanted, Wentz was a good value. Logan Thomas wanted to find his way into this optimal lineup as well.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of keep that to a limit. That was really the only struggle, right? Lance or Wentz really was the big one. DJ Moore, again, I was tempted to put him in there. Najee Harris as well is a fine guy. He could stick in there, but I had to maneuver this a little bit just to not have too much. I didn't want Harris because of the injury concerns, and I didn't want too many commanders, but all in all, I think it came out pretty nicely.
Al, what's the rule on doing quadruple stacks when it comes to Washington Commanders? Is that okay?
I mean, look, if you really want to get completely off the reservation, if you're expecting 8 touchdowns from them, then maybe you could win a tournament if you play 4, 5, 6 players from the same
There you
team.
go, Mike.
We're just going to do some tournament lineups with just Lions and Commanders.
And just Commanders. That's
we talked about it. There's so many except the defense, right? There's so many lineup blocks from both of those games. You could have a lot of fun with Swift and Amon-Ra on one side, and then we just talked about all the Commanders. You could fill out a lineup pretty easily with those two teams.
All right, I'm going to go through my lineup here really quickly. I'm starting off with Carson Wentz as my quarterback, $5,800. My 2 running backs are Saquon and CMC. For my wide receiver, I'm going with 2 target monsters in Michael Pittman Jr., 13 targets week 1. Christian Kirk, 12 targets in week 1. I've got Rondale Moore that I will likely swap out for Greg Dortch if he ends up not going, so I've got money there. Logan Thomas, $3,400 as that cheap tight end play. Darrell Henderson with all the value that he is in my flex as the 4 p.m. game. A part of this, just make sure that if you are doing this, you're putting the latest game possible in your flex to give you the most upside in case anything happens.
Flexibility, yes.
And then that's why it's called the flex position. I think it's called flexibility. And then the Bengals defense, $2,200, just the best defense on the slate this week. I'm all in on Cincinnati.
Right, so now I know who to root against. Got it.
How freaking dare you? All right, we're going to get Al's lineup in just 1 second. But first, when it comes to choosing the top running back, wide receiver, quarterback, even which defense is right for you on any given week, you know where to turn. But when you're trying to decide on the right credit card for your wallet, the right mortgage lender for your dream home, or the right savings account, where do you go? The nerds at NerdWallet are here to help you make the smart financial decisions. NerdWallet is a personal finance site run by money nerds. Think about people as obsessed about personal finance as you are about fantasy sports. And we want to share their knowledge with you in order to help you guys make the best financial decisions for you. Let's say you're looking for a new rewards credit card. NerdWallet can help you compare cashback cards side by side so you can feel comfortable choosing the only one that suits your spending needs. Think of them like your weekly wide receiver PPR rankings, but you're comparing top credit cards that work for you. So are you ready to make a smart financial decision? Compare and find the top credit cards, savings accounts, and more at nerdwallet.com. NerdWallet, the smartest decision for all your financial decisions. NerdWallet Compare Inc. NMLS 1617539. NerdWallet is not an investment advisor nor an investment broker. Information is for educational purposes only. All right, Alvin, set us up. You heard it. The people want the best lineup that they can have. When you are choosing the best quarterback, the best running back, the best wide receiver, Al, we're coming to you. Give us your week 2 tournament lineup.
And this lineup probably shouldn't be legal in 30 of the 48 contiguous, but here we go. It's completely sick. We're going to double stack Derek Carr with Darren Waller and Devontae Adams. We're going to bring him back on the other side. I'm assuming Greg Dortch is going to be the starter. We'll swap out to another value if we have to in that spot. Joe Mixon and Darrell Henderson Jr. are the running backs. Good values, high volume there. And I've got a secondary stack with Michael Pittman Jr. And Zay Jones, who got 3 end zone targets. Got the Bengals defense right now at 2,200, easily the best value defense on the board.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I think in tournaments, if you set a lot of lineups, the Bengals are going to be really chalky, right? You're probably going to want to pivot off that in a sizable number if you set a bunch of lineups, but definitely in cash. Love the Bengals against Cooper Rush.
Is this, Al, is this one of those situations where you stacked a running back with a defense as a part of the correlation from that standpoint? Or did that just happen to work out that way as far as values go? Because
I just didn't get there. And tournament percentage projections aren't out just yet. But typically speaking, I'm not going to play a defense if in tournaments they project for over 15 or 20% because there's just so much variance at the position.
Gotcha.
And I can go with the Jets or something. I can swap out. I went with Mixon over Barkley because I believe that Barkley is going to be at least twice as much held as Joe Mixon this weekend, which you want to get a lower percentage, maybe a combined projection on percentage in tournaments, stay under 130, especially in large field like the Millionaire Maker.
Heck yeah. All right, Al. Sounds like a great week 2 tournament lineup. I like my week 2 cash lineup.
Oh, we all do. I hope you do. If you're not, you need to reevaluate your life.
Wow.
Your life.
Wow.
Your life. Reevaluate your decision making.
All right. That's going to do it for today's show.
I'm good at words.
This is, you know what? You're good at numbers, and that's what matters,
That's
Mike.
why I'm
That's
here.
what's important. For Al, for Mike, my name is Daniel. We love you guys. Follow everyone on Twitter at Mike Clay NFL, at Al Zeidenfeld, at Daniel Dopp. We will tweet out the link to our cash lineup, our head-to-head lineup where you can go against Mike and I. We love you guys. Stick around for the Friday show. It'll be here. It's going to be a ton of fun. Well, good luck here in week 2.